All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the West Placer Virtual Community Meeting on Water. This presentation will be recorded and the replay will be available at placer.ca.gov/Bonnie Gore. I'm Supervisor Bonnie Gore, and I have the honor of representing the residents of Roseville and West Placer. So why are we talking about water? Back in March, we hosted a community meeting about development in West Placer and in Roseville. And one area where residents had additional questions really centered around water. So if you're interested in viewing the presentation about development, you can find the replay on my county webpage at placer.ca.gov/Bonnie Gore. So here's our opportunity to hear from the experts at our local water agencies, and they're going to inform us about how we can plan for, how we source, store, convey, and provide water to our residents and businesses now and into the future. So here's our agenda for this evening. I'm going to share with you a few key phrases you will hear during our discussion. You'll hear from our panel of experts, folks from Placer County Water Agency, the City of Roseville, and California American Water. And then we have resident questions. We've received a number of questions from you all, which we shared with our presenters, and they will include those during the presentation. Other common questions will be addressed during our Q&A, and Landon, you can forward to the next slide. And questions about specific situations or smaller projects will be addressed directly to residents who submitted them. All right, let's start with key phrases. Water, like any industry, has some interesting terms that are not necessarily known by lay people. So here are some key words and phrases that will be used throughout this evening's presentation. Acre foot. Acre foot is a form of measurement for large quantities of water. 1 acre filled with 1 foot of water. So basically, a football field is about an acre. So that's how much we're talking about with an acre foot. ASR wells, aquifer storage and recovery wells that can both extract and recharge water. Groundwater basin, essentially space underground where water can be stored and used, especially during dry and drought conditions. Conjunctive use, an operational construct where groundwater is being used when surface water is less available, like during dry and drought years, and conversely, using surface water during normal or wet periods. And recycled water. That's wastewater that has been treated to a point where it is just below drinking water standards, and it is safe to use for irrigation of areas such as parks, golf courses, and medians. It's a source of water used significantly in West Roseville, freeing up water to be used for residents and businesses. All right, so now that we've got the business out of the way, we are going to move on to our panel. First joining us is Andrew Fecko. Andrew is the General Manager of Placer County Water Agency. Andy has served the people of Placer County in various capacities with PCWA since 2006. He oversees 3 independent sources of water supply for the agency's retail, wholesale, and agricultural customers. He also directs the agency's water and energy stewardship efforts throughout the county. Welcome, Andy, and I will let you take it away.
Excellent. Thank you for the invitation, Supervisor Gore. And yeah, I thought we had some excellent questions back in March during the development, and I'm happy to continue the conversation today to let residents know about what we're doing for current and future residents for water supply. So Landon, why don't we get started? So yeah, there'll be some pretty pictures in this presentation, and there's going to be some facts and hopefully address some questions. So let's go on to the next slide, Landon. Appreciate it. So Placer County Water Agency is a public water agency. We're headquartered here in Auburn, California. We are a countywide agency. We have a 5-member elected board of directors. They are served from the same districts as our board of supervisors do. And these are the priorities that our board has set for staff: safe, reliable delivery of water and energy, a balanced cost of service along with reliability, a responsiveness to our customers, which we think is really important, stewardship over our resources, that's financial resources, water resources, and natural resources. And of course, readiness to serve demands of the future. That's why this agency was formed in 1957, was to provide for water resources for the economic development of Placer County. And we take that mission very, very seriously indeed. And you're going to hear a little bit about that from me tonight. So next slide, Landon. So I'll go back to 1957 with a little bit of history lesson for folks. After World War II in California began to grow very, very quickly as folks who served in the military found that California was a really nice place to live. In Southern California and the Bay Area, those communities sort of exploded as people moved here and settled here after the war. And those communities needed a source of water. And so they began to go out into the Sierra Nevadas chiefly and develop their own water supplies. Places like Mono Lake in the Eastern Sierra, the Owens Valley, Yosemite, the McCollumney River were all sort of developed for the benefit of the Bay Area and Southern California. And the people of Placer County at the time saw this occurring and decided that they wanted to develop a public water supply for their own local benefit here in the county, rather than have it be developed by someone else for export. And so they've formed Placer County Water Agency, our predecessors did. It was formed by the County Board of Supervisors in a special act of the state legislature. And it was formed, as I said, as a countywide water agency, but with the express intent of developing a project that would store water and deliver it for the benefit of the people of Placer. And so the two reservoirs that are on the screen that you're looking at here, French Meadows Reservoir on the right of your screen, that's to the north, and Hellhole Reservoir on the left, which is just to the south, are two principal storage reservoirs that we built as part of the Middle Fork project. The people of this county voted in the late 1950s to construct the Middle Fork project by a margin of 25-1, by the way. That's how important water was in the county in the late 1950s, to essentially indebt themselves to build this project. It costs about $125 million to build. It consists of these two storage reservoirs. They combined, they hold 342,000 acre feet. So 342,000 football fields, 1 foot deep. Which is, an acre foot, just for perspective, in Placer County, that's about what 2 families use in the city of Roseville in a year. And so that gives you a little bit of perspective on what an acre foot is. We've got 342,000 acre feet that we store in these 2 reservoirs. And it's connected. These reservoirs are just on the other side of, on the west slope of the Sierra Nevada, just on the other side from Lake Tahoe. And it's connected to West Placer County by 27 miles of tunnel and 5 hydroelectric generating facilities. And that's how we move water from these 2 reservoirs to West Placer County. It was designed and always was thought of as the future water supply for Placer County. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how much of this water we currently put to use and what our plan is for the future. So next slide, please, Landon. Thank you. So that's not our only source of supply. You'll see French Meadows and Hellhole on this cartoon, but it's not our only source of supply. We also buy water from Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and you'll see that represented on the top of this slide, called PG&E Supply, for Zone 3, and then Upper Zone 6 and Lower Zone 6, I'm sorry. And that we can buy up to 125,400 acre feet from Pacific Gas and Electric Company every year. Why? That's another interesting historical perspective. The reservoirs that PG&E currently owns, which you can see when you drive to Lake Tahoe on the north side of Highway 80, you'll always see Lake Spalding as you drive up Highway 80. Those reservoirs there were developed for one purpose originally, and that was hydraulic mining, which is a practice that essentially involved washing hillsides off through sluice boxes to collect gold. When that practice was banned in the late 1880s, that was just about the time that PG&E the predecessor of PG&E came into existence to begin electrifying homes and businesses in California. And they bought those reservoirs to install hydroelectric generating capacity. And they also formed a business around selling the water once it had gone through their generators to our burgeoning agricultural enterprises in Placer County. At the time, Placer was uniquely positioned because we had a transcontinental railroad that ran right through the middle of the county. And we had this robust water supply that PG&E was selling to agricultural operations. And so we became, at the time, the largest fruit growing region anywhere in the US that was concentrated as it was, because we could get fresh fruit onto the Transcontinental Railroad and move it to the East Coast in a matter of days, which was just simply unheard of for any other region in the country. And so PG&E was the original water supplier for places like Auburn, Newcastle, Penryn, Loomis, and Rockland, all those agricultural districts there. And as those grew into places where people called home, PG&E was their water supplier as well. PG&E decided to get out of that water supply business in the late 1960s, and PCWA bought that enterprise from them and became the water service provider for all of those communities, as well as the communities of Alta all the way down through Auburn. And so we inherited that business, and with it came a water supply from PG&E's hydroelectric operation. And so in combination, we can deliver from the PG&E supply as well as our Middle Fork supply almost 250,000 acre feet of water into West Placer on an annual basis. And so it's a very, very robust supply. And I'll talk a little bit about how we get it to folks. So two primary ways we get water from those supplies. In the Middle Fork, you'll see in the middle of a screen something labeled American River Pump Station. And that's at Auburn, at what was going to be the Auburn Dam site. We pump water out of the river there, and we can supply all the communities from Auburn on down the mountain all the way to the valley floor. And the other way we can get water to West Placer is to through Folsom Reservoir. We can deliver water down the Middle Fork American River into Folsom Reservoir, where folks like San Juan Water District and the city of Roseville take advantage of the facilities at Folsom to treat water and deliver it to their own customers. And there's more to be done on infrastructure, and I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. We also have one other source of supply, and that is our Central Valley Project supply from the Bureau of Reclamation. We currently can take delivery of that from Folsom Reservoir, but we intend in the future to take delivery of that from the Sacramento River. And you'll see a box called CDP supply at 35,000 acre feet from the Sacramento River. So all told, if you're keeping tally, that's 250 from the mountains and another 35,000 from the CVP. That's 285,000 acre feet that we can currently deliver. Just remember, 1 acre foot can serve 2 families in Placer County. And so, yeah, very, very robust supply from PCWA. Next slide, Landon. Thank you. So what's the limitation, right? What's our current limitations? Well, the way that we build infrastructure at PCWA, and I think other water purveyors are very similar, is we build it as we need it. Water infrastructure, especially treatment plant infrastructure, is very expensive to build. And so we build it as it becomes needed. So what you're seeing on the screen now is an artist rendition of our next water treatment plant at Ophir. We already have some of these facilities existing, but this allows us to treat water that comes from either the PG&E system or the American River and treat it at this facility and deliver it to all points west of Newcastle. And that includes plans for new development west and north of Lincoln, all the way out to extreme edges of West Placer County in the future planned Placer Parkway area, areas north of the city of Roseville. All that water, that new water service is going to come from this facility and or from the Sacramento River at the River Arc project, which I depicted on the last screen. So infrastructure is our major challenge going into the future, and we're planning for construction. We have all the design done for this facility, and we intend to probably start construction of it closer to the end of this decade in the late 2020s. Again, as economic development occurs in Placer, we respond by building these facilities and serving that growth from the robust water supply that I described earlier. So I think I'll end there and hand it off to the next presenter. And I think, Landon, I think that's fine. And we'll have contact information at the end and, of course, answer questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Andy. Appreciate the presentation. And let me put this back up so that you can see me as I am speaking. There we go. All right. If you do actually have questions and you want some clarification of anything that one of the speakers is talking about, there is an opportunity in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you have a couple of questions of clarification, we've got some folks who can answer some of those questions, so you're welcome to use that Q&A feature. All right, next we have Shawn Bigley, and Shawn is with the City of Roseville. He's been with the City of Roseville for 16 years, serving in various roles, and he now serves as the Assistant Environmental Utilities Director, responsible for the operation of Roseville's water utility. Prior to his work at the City of Roseville, Shawn worked for the California Attorney General's Office and other public agencies. He has a master's degree in public administration from Cal State University, Sonoma. Shawn, take it away.
Right. Well, thank you, Supervisor Gore. I appreciate the time this evening to present here to the community on water. So again, Shawn Bigley, Assistant Environmental Utilities Director for the City of Roseville. And tonight I'll spend some time talking about what my team is constantly working on, which is water resource and infrastructure planning. It's an activity that is a constant aspect of our mission, regardless of the type of water year. So I'm hoping tonight that I can provide a peek behind the curtain to provide you context and cover what we have planned for the future in terms of water supply reliability. So next slide, please. All right, so first, really just kind of want to talk a little bit about what our North Star is with respect to water resource and infrastructure planning in the City of Roseville. And this really kind of stems for us from our strategic business plan that helps guide the city's water utility. So in this graphic here, you can see that there is one goal that's highlighted, and among those many other goals, one is really focused on water resource adequacy, and really kind of three kind of key strategies, and I'll walk through that really quickly. Strategy one is really to focus on increasing water supply access through conveyance projects and water supply diversification.
All right, Shawn, you're freezing up a little bit, so maybe take off your video and see if you can just give us the verbal.
All right, is that better?
Better, yes, thank you.
All right, so just back up a bit. Our first strategy is to increase water supply access through projects and water supply diversification. So this acknowledges two areas that we have been focused on. First, acknowledging that this area has been served very well at Folsom Reservoir for many decades, but one vulnerability is having access to surface water through one intake at Folsom Reservoir. The fact that the City of Roseville does not operate Folsom Reservoir, rather it's operated by the federal government. So long-term, it's important that we seek alternative access to our surface water supplies other than one intake at Folsom Reservoir. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the following slide. Also really important for the City of Roseville is our mission to focus in on water supply diversification. When it's dry, surface water is typically less available, making it important to have access to groundwater that is available to us. Conversely, during wet periods, it's important we take advantage of available surface water to recharge the groundwater basin for the next drought. Finally, we have to leverage the water resources that we have. So an example of this is we have the ability to treat available wastewater through our two regional wastewater treatment plants to a level that the resource can be used as recycled water to irrigate landscape saving drinking water for people. Second strategy is demand management. So in all times other than a drought, we're continuously looking for ways to reduce system leakage, partner with our customers to make their homes more water efficient for the long term, and seek out ways that we can work with our business and institutional customers for them to also become more water efficient over time. In times of drought, when surface water is scarce, it becomes necessary at times to require additional water conservation actions of our customers to reduce their water use. This all requires robust communication with our customers and partnerships through our water efficient program offerings. Finally, third strategy, which really strategies 1 and 2 are only successful, is with strong statewide and regional partnerships to coordinate on strategy, build new mutually beneficial structure, and develop stronger ways to support each other regionally for the betterment of the region. For the city of Roseville, one of the most important and enduring relationships that we have is with our neighbor, Placer County Water Agency. And I'll explain that a little bit more in the next slide. So next slide, please. All right. So with that, as a planning focus as context, I'd like to cover what projects the city of Roseville has been working on over the years, and more recently to add water supply reliability into the future. So this image is a representation of Western Placer County with a focus on the city of Roseville and our shared border with the Placer County Water Agency. Within the city of Roseville, we are working on the following projects on a longer term basis. First, we're expanding access to groundwater resources. So the city of Roseville underlies a vast groundwater basin that contains quality water that can be sustainably extracted during dry years and similarly recharged during wet years. This is done through 6 aquifer storage and recovery groundwater wells, or ASR wells, that we have within the city of Roseville. To further diversify and add capacity to our system, we are working to add 6 more ASR wells to the system in the next 5 years. Secondly, creating alternative access points to water supplies from the American River. The city of Roseville, in addition to water supplies from the government, the Folsom Reservoir has water supplies in Placer County Water Agency project. PCDA water supplies can only be taken through the intake of Folsom Reservoir, mostly. Within the next several years, Roseville and PCWA hope to expand our shared water intertie facilities, as well as build additional water conveyance in the PWA service area that will allow the city of Roseville to access its PCWA surface water supplies from an intake or access point upstream of Folsom Reservoir. This not only allows for greater water supply reliability, but will allow us to have access to water supplies upstream, important part, upstream that are within local control. This robust interconnection between Roseville and PCWA will be important once the Sacramento Regional Water Bank is established within the Sacramento region. Finally, the city of Roseville for several decades has expanded its purple pipe recycled water system, which you'll see here on the graphic. It's in the top left corner of the graphic here.
All right, I think we might have lost Shawn, unfortunately, and I am going to come back here and see if, well, it looks like we lost Shawn. Probably we're not ready to have Maurice jump in. So let's do this. While Shawn is coming back in, there you are.
Bonnie, can you hear me?
There, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All right, you're coming in and out. So let's give it a shot, Shawn.
Okay, I'm almost done. So finally, the city of Roseville for several decades has invested in expanded purple pipe recycled water system, which is for our 2 regional wastewater treatment plants. This has allowed the city of Roseville to expand supplies for landscape irrigation in West Roseville.
All right, we lost you again, Shawn. All right, we're going to try again, see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Try again, Shawn, and if not, we might just have to go to Evan and come back to you.
Okay. So essentially, we have a recycled water system that we're able to get from our 2 regional wastewater treatment plants. So also with the current drought underway, to add additional capacity to our system, we have expedited working with PCWA to
I guess someone does not want us to talk about recycled water, but we have a whole lot of it in West Roseville in the city of Roseville. And the plan is to have some in Placer, West Placer as well. Shawn, try again. And if not, we're not hearing you.
can you hear me, Bonnie?
Now I can. Give it a shot.
All right, here we go. So finally, just wanted to acknowledge that Reservoir PCWA have a shared board seat on the Reservoir Power System since 2017. We've been active advocates for building the reservoir and general water storage in California. We like Reservoir, once it's built, will have a measurable positive impact on the state's water resource situation and be beneficial to the Sacramento region in the long term. With that, I will conclude my presentation and I will turn it over to Evan Jacobs. So thank you for your time tonight.
Great. Thank you very much, Shawn. Really appreciate the work that the city of Roseville does to make sure we've got great water. And we are now going to move to Evan Jacobs. Evan is the Director of Government Relations with California American Water. Evan has over 15 years of experience working with California American Water, the California American Water team to deliver safe, reliable, and affordable water service. During the last drought, Evan managed California American Water's state drought response team and led successful efforts to achieve a 26% reduction in water use. He serves on the boards of Groundwater Sustainability agencies in Yolo, Sacramento, and Sonoma counties, and is currently the president of California Water Association. Thank you for joining us, Evan.
Thank you, Supervisor Gore. Hopefully you can hear me all right. And I'm coming in loud and clear. I am visiting my father in North Carolina today. So coming at you from across the country, but hopefully my technology as well. I wanted to introduce folks to California American Water. I'm guessing most folks in Placer County don't know a lot about us. If you want to go to the next slide, Landon, I would appreciate it. Great, thank you. So who we are, California American Water is a water and wastewater utility that's regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission. We do have operations in different parts of the state, but in the Sacramento region, we serve about 65,000 homes and businesses and 11 separate water systems, everywhere from Isleton down in the Delta up to Antelope and Western Placer County outside of the Roseville city limits. Locally, we have about 85 employees in our Sacramento office, a number of certified water and wastewater treatment operators, water quality experts, engineers, and support staff like me. And then zeroing in more specifically on Placer County, our West Placer service area is west of the city of Roseville, just north of our Antelope system. And we're currently serving about 1,380 customers there. And when we talk about customers, we talk about a connection. So it may be a family of 5 or a business that's behind that connection or that we consider a customer, so the population is greater. In our West Placer area, we rely entirely on surface water from PCWA. So the water we get comes treated from us down from the reservoirs from Placer County Water Agency. Really pristine, great water supply comes out there. There is one exception. There is a manufactured home community that's in Placer County that we serve from our Antelope water system, and our Antelope system south of the border relies more heavily on groundwater. Next slide, please, Landon. Thank you. A little bit more about our company. As I said, we are water and wastewater professionals. It's what we do, and we, in addition to making sure that we're providing high quality, reliable service, we're trying to provide excellent customer service to everyone that gets their supply from us. So we have a local office. It's in North Sacramento near McClellan Air Force Base. We actually just reopened it to customers after, many months of it being closed due to COVID. So nice that we're starting to get back to business as normal. We do have a customer service center. It's centralized. It is available 24/7 to our customers. You can always reach our live body with our company and get a technician or operator dispatched for an emergency. And then we also try to make things as easy as possible for our customers. We have a great website. We have simple online billing and payment options there. We are able to post emergency information in real time should we ever have a main break or some other emergency. Of course, have our water quality reports, conservation, and customer assistance programs all available online. And then we always encourage folks that are our customers to sign up and follow us on social media. It's a great way in the event of an emergency to get more information in a timely manner or learn more about some of the programs and services we have to offer for our customers. Next slide, please, Landon. And I know we're going to talk a lot more about conservation tonight, but we are very proud of our conservation services. We have dedicated full-time staff in our Sacramento office that are trained conservation specialists. One of the best things they do is they will come to your house for no charge, look at your irrigation system with you, check indoors for leaks, and really give your whole house a water use survey and give you suggestions on how to save water or use water more efficiently. We have free tools and fixtures available, various kinds of rebates and direct install programs. And we do have a local phone number there that is our conservation hotline. Usually goes to voicemail if our folks are out in the field, but you can leave a message and we'll reach back out to you. We are also very proud of our affordability programs at California American Water. We have a customer assistance program for families that are struggling, for seniors that are on fixed incomes. It provides a discount on our bills. Eligibility is similar to PG&E and SMUD care programs. So if you are enrolled in one of those programs, you automatically qualify for ours. And we're also trying to help people through the pandemic right now with payment plans, crisis assistance, and other things we can do for those that are still suffering the effects of the change in the economy based on COVID. And I think that gets me to the end of my slide deck, but looking forward to the discussion and happy to answer any questions. Thanks again, Supervisor Gore.
Thank you very much, Evan. And we're going to do this. We're going to go back to Shawn Bigley, ask Shawn to finish up on that last slide that actually is really important because the city of Roseville provides water for a large portion of folks who are listening right now. So Shawn, let's give it a shot, see if we can hear you and have you address this slide one more time.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Gore. I appreciate the time and sorry for the difficulties there. It's the life of having virtual meetings. So, all right. So just really quickly, I'll just cover the projects in just brief, just to make sure we're all there. So first, I just want to acknowledge that City of Roseville is expanding access to our groundwater resources. Currently, we have 6 aquifer storage and recovery wells that are in our system currently. We're actually looking to add 6 additional ASR wells in the next 5 years. We're also working diligently to create alternative access points to water supplies from the American River. So we're working very closely right now with the Placer County Water Agency and really trying to develop the conveyance and intertie infrastructure to be able to access those water supplies that we have a contract with Placer County Water Agency. And again, that's important just based on the fact that currently we do have really primarily one access point for our surface water, and that's from Folsom Reservoir. And for added supply reliability for the long term, it's going to be extremely important to have those robust interconnections with Placer County Water Agency. And then again, I just wanted to acknowledge that we have invested and expanded our Purple Pipe recycled water system to get feed water through our 2 regional wastewater treatment plants. This water supply is actually quite helpful in West Roseville specifically because it allows us to use recycled water for landscape irrigation while saving drinking water for humans. So this is an important investment we've made in Roseville for several decades, and we're going to continue to look for opportunities to expand its use. And then in terms of just the current drought, we are actually expediting 2 of our ASR wells. We're trying to complete those 2 ASR wells by next year. And we are also working specifically with PCWA in terms of expansion of one specific intertype facility by 2022, and that's our goal. So in closing, I just wanted to reiterate that PCWA and Roseville since 2017 have been part of the Sites Reservoir Joint Powers Authority. Both agencies have been active advocates for building of Sites Reservoir. And Sites Reservoir, just for the point of reference, is located near the town of Maxwell. It's in the northwest, sort of central northwest part of the state. And that project actually holds a lot of promise in terms of adding surface water storage capacity within the state of California. And as many people acknowledge, it's badly needed at this point in time. And so our agencies have been very active in advocating for that project. Again, we feel that project adds a lot of promise in terms of improving the situation in the state, as well as definitely providing some benefits to the Sacramento region in the long term. So with that, that was my last slide. And thanks again for the retry on going through that, Supervisor Gore. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Shawn. I appreciate that. All right, we're going to move to the Q&A portion. And basically, we've taken a lot of the questions that you have asked, and we're going to combine them together and hear from our experts. Before we do that, joining us for the Q&A is Bruce Houdesheldt. Bruce is the Vice Mayor of the City of Roseville. He's got a water background, and he's also a board member with the Sites Reservoir Project Authority. So Bruce, thank you for joining us. And we're going to move now to the first question. And the first question is, and this is the question really that it's the question that most of you all have, and residents have been asking us as we've had all this development. And that is, how can we sustain new development in recognition of the fact that we are being asked to conserve our water use statewide and locally?
Sure. So thanks, Supervisor Gore. Let me start with that one. This is Andy. Going back to the formation of the agency, right? We were formed to make sure that we had enough water developed to provide for the future economic development of Placer County. We take that mission very, very seriously. And so that starts by, it's a mission of coordination, really. And so both at the county and all of our municipalities in West Placer County, PCWA is very tightly coordinated with those entities that make land use decisions. And so what we do is regularly, and I mean, many times a year, check in with our municipalities that are approving land use plans all throughout West Placer and all throughout the county to see what they're up to, how many new residents we're going to be adding. And then they ask us a very simple question. What's your plan for serving water to these new residents? And we have a plan. And so Landon, could you back up to that slide that had the cartoon of Placer in it? That would be really helpful. That one, thank you. So I mentioned robust water supplies, 125,400 acre feet from Pacific Gas and Electric, and then 120,000 acre feet from our 340,000 acre feet of storage on the Middle Fork American River project from French Meadows and Hellhole Reservoir. Of that 120,000 acre feet that Placer County Water Agency is allowed to withdraw from the river for beneficial uses in Placer County, the most we've ever used is slightly less than half. And so I just want to put that in perspective. Half of the water supplies that are developed in those two reservoirs that are completely under our control is available to serve new residents and businesses in Placer County. We can take that water out of the river at Auburn at the American River Pump Station, or at Folsom Reservoir to serve folks like the city of Roseville and San Juan Water District. We've done that very conscientiously to make sure that when we get the development plans from places like City of Loomis, City of Rockland, City of Roseville, the City of Lincoln, and unincorporated areas of Placer County, when they tell us what their growth needs are, we plan for how to dispatch water from those reservoirs to those communities. It's an infrastructure problem, really, in the short term, in that we have to develop the treatment plant capacity and the pipelines to get the water to those communities, and we're doing that right now. But it is not a problem of supply for us. we have adequate supply in our own reservoirs to serve the build out, growth and development needs of all of the communities of Placer County. And we know that because those communities have told us what their build out numbers are. So it's a pretty simple answer for PCWA. Maybe Shawn, if you want to take the story up from there for the city.
Yeah. So for the city of Roseville, like really all cities and land use agencies in California, we are guided by a process that's basically set out by a variety of laws from the state of California. And, you know, the simple fact of the matter is that within the city of Roseville, we have specific plans, which are essentially additional areas that are added within the city of Roseville. Those developments or those developers have to bring additional blocks of water to the table in order for those projects to even be considered by governing boards, in our example, by our city council. And so those specific plans, if they don't bring that block of water to the table, they really can't be legally considered for approval at the end of the day. And so oftentimes I think what's a little confusing about it is I think oftentimes water supply is seen as a fixed pie. And really the way to think about how water supply works within a city as an example is that it's really not a fixed pie where you add additional development and it takes from that existing pie. Rather, it's adding additional pies to the table. And I think that's probably a good analogy to use to really kind of understand that construct. And so with that, you know, our job here within the Environmental Utilities Department is to work with our partners like Placer County Water Agency and other areas to ensure that the infrastructure is in place to be able to access those water supplies and also that we have the water supplies there to be able to support that additional development within the city. And then one other thing it's probably worth acknowledging is within that construct during dry or drought periods, those additional water supplies are based on normal water situations. And so if we have drought periods, it's the same. It's not just the city of Roseville aspect, but throughout the state of California, agencies do from time to time have to require water conservation during droughts. And that's just simply the way that that the things are set up within the state of California. So with that, I think that covers it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so just to reiterate, although we have drought conditions, the water that we have in the reservoirs currently is meeting our needs that we have and can meet the needs of the future development that is planned, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We've got all the development plans for the cities and the unincorporated areas of Placer County covered with our sources of supply. And whether PCWA serves those areas or the city of Roseville or the city of Lincoln, we work with those partners to make sure that we bring them the raw water that they need to serve those areas of economic development, whether it's commercial or residential or in some cases agriculture.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to question 2. Given that we are in a statewide drought and the governor has asked us to reduce water use, what are the measures that our local water purveyors are asking of us? And if you would distinguish between residential and commercial responses to the drought. And so I'll hand that off to Shawn and then to Evan.
Yeah, so for the city of Roseville, right now, what we are asking customers to do is to adhere to our stage 2 drought action. So basically what that is for our customers is from a citywide standpoint, we are really trying to reduce water usage by about 20%. And the reason why we're doing that is it goes back to the constraint of infrastructure that the city of Roseville currently has, which is that one intake at Folsom Reservoir. So the reason why the city of Roseville decided to move forward with that stage 2 is we are trying to be very conservative, understanding that we don't know what the upcoming precipitation season could bring, and hopefully it brings lots of rain and lots of snow. I'll be the first one to celebrate in the streets if that happens. but to be proactive and to make sure that we understand that there is risk there relative to Folsom Reservoir, we felt it's prudent that we need to start to conserve water and to get our customers to a point where we reach a certain target. And again, we're working very closely behind the scenes to develop infrastructure to reduce or mitigate those impacts. And then, of course, we talked about the longer term projects that we're working on. So with respect to residential customers, really what it boils down to is their set watering days based on times of year. And right now we're in the city of Roseville, we're asking both residential and commercial customers to only water 2 times during the week during prescribed watering days. We're also asking our customers to take some really simple steps. As an example, we ask that folks don't use a hose that doesn't have some type of restraint on it, doesn't let that water flow openly, but uses some type of nozzle to really constrain that water use. And really the bottom line is that we're really asking both our residential and commercial customers to pay attention to water that's used in landscaping. And that's the majority of the water that's used during our peak season, our summer months, is water use. And we're really asking our customers to use water efficiently, both in indoor and outdoor, but most specifically outdoor landscaping. That's the opportunity where customers can really significantly save water without really impacting their standard of living or how they live their lives and maintain their property. So that's the sort of scenario for the city of Roseville right now.
Great, thank you. I will jump in and the first thing I think is very important for us as water resource professionals to recognize is that Placer County residents in the greater Sacramento region have done an amazing job in reducing per capita water use in the last 20 years. We've seen huge reductions and it's been fantastic. And that's a great story that we have to tell as the Sacramento region, is that we're doing better and that we can be water efficient in a normal water year without impacting our quality of life. And it's a message that we're still trying to get out there. I will say personally, and perhaps on behalf of California American Water, I do think that in the past, the governor sometimes used drought declarations as a blunt instrument. And oftentimes, really the reductions we're looking for should be considered in the context of available water supply. And that hasn't always happened in the past. We will see what happens in the future if we have subsequent dry years after this year. So California American Water is currently in stage 1 of its conservation plan, which means it's still voluntary. A lot of that is really driven by the fact that in the Sacramento region, most of our water systems are primarily dependent on groundwater, and we have fairly abundant groundwater resources still. They take longer to refill than reservoirs, but they also take longer to deplete in a drought situation. So we're asking customers to use water wisely. And really, it comes down to 3 simple things. It is, if you find a leak on your property, if you find a leaking toilet or a broken sprinkler head, fix it quickly. Don't let that water go to waste. Keep the water on your property, right? I know I go out in the morning and walk my dogs, and I hate seeing a stream of water running down the curb into the gutter. So keep the water on your property. Adjust your sprinklers in such a way that it's going to keep the water on your property. You're not going to have a lot of overspray. And then I think the third big piece is we all have our watering schedules and watering days, and follow those, use those. We've designed those so that you can keep all of your landscaping alive, still have nice landscaping, but do it in a way that's efficient and doesn't use too much water. And I guess then going beyond, I think City of Roseville has a great conservation program, probably has similar. For folks that aren't experts on an irrigation system or home plumbing, give us a call. We have people that know how to do it, and we'll come out and help you, and it's at no charge to customers.
Thank you, gentlemen. Our next question: how are the city, county, and water agencies preparing for the future in terms of water supply, added population, and climate change? And we'll hand this off to Andy, then Shawn, and then Vice Mayor Houdesheldt.
Yeah, so really good question. And I see some questions here in the Q&A online or along the lines of climate change. So let me focus my answer on that. So yeah, PCWA, again, we're countywide water agency. We're charged with stewarding the natural resources related to water in the county. And so we take the future climate very, very seriously because it impacts how we operate those reservoirs I discussed earlier. And so in relation to climate change, we partnered with 6 local agencies and the Bureau of Reclamation to complete what's known as a basin study. And the basin study is a very interesting study. And what it does is essentially takes global circulation models related to a changing climate and downscales them, which is a fancy term to just mean localizes them to the American River watershed, where all of our water comes from. And we did that to get a better understanding of what future temperature, future precipitation patterns, and future snowpack might look like. We have a team internally here, PCWA, of hydrologists and meteorologists that led that study along with the Bureau of Reclamation. And we ran a whole suite of models to get a better understanding of the future climate. And we went all the way out to end of century. And so, yeah, the temperature in our area, particularly at the higher elevations, it has warmed over the last 50 years. We have hard data on that in our watershed that PCWA has gathered, and it will continue to warm without any climate mitigations, and even with climate mitigations, will continue to warm for the balance of the century. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean reduced precipitation in our modeling work and in the modeling work of leading climate scientists. What it does mean is reduced snowpack, which is a concern because our reservoirs and PG&E's reservoirs were built with a snowpack in mind. That is another reservoir of frozen water that melts in through the spring and into the summer that helps bolster our water supplies going into summer. So if the snowpack shrinks, we need something to replace the snowpack. And that is why we are so keen and working so hard and investing so much in a regional groundwater bank, and Roseville's investing in their groundwater system as a way of buffering against future changes in climate. In other words, we need to replace the reservoir that is the snowpack with a reservoir that is under our feet. That is the groundwater basin, which currently has about 2 million acre feet of evacuated space. In other words, there is room to store 2 Folsom lakes underneath the region of Sacramento, both north and south of the American River. We think that presents us with a tremendous opportunity. It's also a tremendous infrastructure challenge, but we think that a changing climate demands that we make those investments so that both current and future residents have a reliable source of water, high quality water, that we can count on as society gets its arms around climate change. And so, yeah, climate change is going to affect snowpack. It has affected snowpack. We have modified at PCWA our operations to account for some of that. We were not going to be able to account for all of that with just our reservoir reoperation. And so we're going to invest in a regional groundwater bank that allows us to replace that snowpack with underground storage. So with that, I'll hand it to Shawn to talk about other infrastructure and added population stuff.
Yeah, just to build on what Andy went over, I'll just provide a specific example of infrastructure that's really well suited for anticipated effects of climate change. And I'll use a specific example. So in my presentation, I talked about our aquifer storage and recovery wells. We have 6 wells in the system. We're looking to double the amount of wells to 12 wells within 5 years. That infrastructure, again, it allows us to both extract groundwater, particularly during drier periods when surface water is scarce. But similarly, when we have situations where we have excess surface water or even flood control releases during very wet periods, the city of Roseville is well suited to be able to actually take that water and recharge that water into the groundwater basin proactively, which can conceivably use in a future drought. So in 2019, we actually had a very unique opportunity to do just that. In 2019, we experienced a wetter year. Through our contract with the Bureau of Reclamation, we had the opportunity to actually take excess water that was actually spilling at Folsom Reservoir, take that water use our aquifer storage and recovery wells and actually inject that water into the ground. And that was really kind of the first opportunity for us to robustly use the notion of conjunctive use, and really taking the opportunity for those releases that would have normally floated out into the Pacific Ocean, and actually you take that water and proactively recharge the groundwater basin for future use. So you know, that's what we're doing. We're really looking for diversification of our water supplies, surface water supplies, groundwater supply access, use of recycled water that's available through our 2 regional wastewater treatment plants. And I think really the answer to prepare for climate change is you need a system that's really diverse and is really situated in such a way that can take advantage of varying climate conditions in the future. And the City of Roseville is preparing ourselves accordingly. So with that, I'll stop and see if Bruce has anything else he'd like to add.
Yeah, thank you, Shawn, and then thank you, Supervisor Gore. You know, as was mentioned earlier this evening, Sites Reservoir. If anybody's ever stopped to get gelato at Granzella's, you're pretty close to Sites Reservoir there on the I-5. But Sites Reservoir is being built exactly for the world that we're experiencing, the world that Andy mentioned earlier, a warmer climate, a rainfall scenario in which we're just getting deluged at times, and a world in which there's increasingly competing uses for water. You heard it mentioned earlier, certainly drinking water is vital for all of us. There's also water for agriculture. I spend my day working with agriculture who is conserving water. And then there's water for the aquatic, for the aquatic species, the salmon and everything that is important. So Sites Reservoir, which is halfway between Shasta and the Delta, is designed exactly to work toward climate resiliency. It does not rely on snowmelt. It relies on water that falls below Shasta, below Oroville, and can be then pumped up there and stored there, and then provided at a critical time. The status of that is that they're wrapping up the environmental work this year. They have the financing in place, and the mantra of the Sites Reservoir Board is it's a this decade reality. So we're working hard for that climate resiliency, in addition to all of the other integrated water resource planning that you've heard about this evening.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Houdesheldt. Appreciate that. Our next question. Is it sustainable for us to be relying on groundwater for the future, given the overdraft that has occurred in the Central Valley? How does the city assure that the groundwater quality is safe? Shawn?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Supervisor Gore. Yeah, so really the first part of the question, I just wanted to acknowledge that definitely, you know, what folks see on the news is what's happening in the Central Valley, and there is some pretty extreme examples of overdraft of groundwater basins, and essentially what happens is you see subsidence within those areas, and that damages roadways, infrastructure, et cetera. We're actually quite fortunate in the Sacramento region because for many decades, the groundwater basin has been sustainably managed. And one of the more significant laws that were passed in the past several years was the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And what that essentially required is water agencies in specific basins to work together cooperatively to develop groundwater sustainability plans that'll guide us many decades in the future in terms of how we use groundwater within our area. I'll just say that within our basin is actually relatively very healthy. And in terms of the sort of planning effort going forward through the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, the region's actually working very well together in terms of how we responsibly, sustainably manage our groundwater within the region. So that also applies to the city of Roseville. We're part of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and we're also active in developing that groundwater sustainability plan. So with respect to water quality, with respect to water quality is actually very highly regulated, rightfully so, by the federal government as well as the state government. Our duty is to ensure that we are providing safe, quality drinking water to our customers at all time. We have a water permit that we operate by, and there's a lot of robust measures that are in place with respect to laws and regulations. But in addition, we actually have invested in additional resources to ensure that our water quality is always meets standards and is always good quality for our customers. And so we don't just rely on the base standard laws and regulations within the city of Roseville. We've actually invested in hiring a professional hydrogeologist that studies water quality deeply with respect to our groundwater basin. We also have a staff person that's really dedicated to water quality testing within the city of Roseville. And we do whatever water quality testing we think is appropriate above and beyond what those requirements are to ensure that the groundwater we are serving to our customers is of good quality and meets all the drinking water quality standards that we're required to meet. So very robust program, very proud of that program. And as a result, we feel good about the product that we provide our customers day in and day out.
Thank you, Shawn. And the reality is the city of Roseville's water is terrific. And I tell everybody that you should not buy bottled water, and you should just fill up your water bottle like I do every single day with water from the tap from the city of Roseville. We are very fortunate.
Absolutely.
All right, our next question is, let's talk about recycled water and how is recycled water being incorporated into the water supply planning for Placer County? We know that we've got a lot of it in the city of Roseville, but what about Placer County? So maybe Shawn and then Evan.
Yeah, so we're very proud of our recycled water system. This recycled water system was initially started to be developed in the 1990s. And we have within the city of Roseville 2 regional wastewater treatment plants that gather flow from really from the eastern part of, or the middle part of Placer County downhill into the city of Roseville. So we actually have ample wastewater that we treat. We have for a number of decades treated that wastewater, and really by virtue of sort of the growth pattern within the city of Roseville, we've been able to require that recycled water systems be installed in those newer areas of town. Why that's really important is, again, it's an ability to use the water resources we have. It allows us to treat this water to a level just below drinking water to be applied to golf courses, medians, parks, etc. And it's really a better and higher use of that water in the context of landscape watering. And so, we have the resource and we've made the investment over the years, and it's really an important aspect of the diversification of our water supply within the city of Roseville, and really kind of taking that resource to the extra extent and really recycling it and making the most of what we have in terms of water resources. So with that, I'll turn it over to Evan.
Thanks, Shawn. I don't have much to add. I definitely stand by your comments. We are working, California American Water is working with the city of Roseville to get recycled water into our service area in West Placer County and make sure it's there as a resource. I just wanted to add on the water quality. I don't know if you mentioned it. All of us as water providers produce very detailed water quality reports every year that show the results of the thousands of water quality tests we do. They're called consumer confidence reports. They are posted on all of our websites. For those that really want to do a deeper dive on water quality, there's a lot of great information in there that shows what we're testing for and what we're finding.
Thanks, Evan, for adding that. We have a couple of questions that came in through the Q&A function. So we'll got about 5 or 6 of these. We'll start with Andy. And the question is, how are water needs of agriculture being incorporated into long-term plans?
Oh yeah, really good question. Thanks, Supervisor Gore. So, like I said, Placer County started as an agriculturally based community, and it's slowly been converting. But we still have significant volumes of agriculture. In fact, probably half the water PCWA supplies in any given year is still used by agriculture, whether that's small farms that are growing mandarins in the foothills. We've got orchards, we've got nurseries, we've got vineyards, and we have rice out in Placer County. In fact, rice is the #1 crop by dollar in Placer County currently last year. And so we continue to serve agriculture in Placer County, and we intend to do so in the future. And it's actually part of the story of county governance, and the Placer County Conservation Plan has really been around preservation of our agricultural resources in Placer County. It's why we're a part of the PCCP here at PCWA, because it's really done a good job of delineating where we're going to have agricultural areas, where we're going to have natural areas. And really, as a planning document, has helped PCWA understand what we're going to be serving out in unincorporated Placer County going forward. So we have a good understanding of where agriculture is going to continue. We also have a good understanding of where some agriculture around the margins of places like Lincoln is probably going to turn into residential or commercial development. And that's all part of our long-term plan that we work with the cities and the counties around to make sure that we can deliver either raw water, that is water that doesn't go through a treatment plant, but we deliver right out of our reservoirs to agriculture, and where we need to treat water and put pipe in the ground to serve future communities and future businesses. And so, yeah, agriculture is definitely part of the long-term vision of Placer County. It's actually one of the missions. And it's one of our missions to continue to serve agriculture.
Thanks, Andy. And you used the term PCCP, that's the Placer County Conservation Plan. And that's the county's effort with our partners to make sure we actually conserve land for agricultural use, open space, etc. Next question, Shawn, how about commenting on the overall quality of our water in Roseville and Placer County as compared to other regions? So how's our quality doing in comparison to others?
Well, this isn't an exaggeration. I think we do have probably the best water quality in California, and I'll just kind of explain it in this regard. So oftentimes throughout the state of California, you have systems that go through several sort of iterations in terms of drinking, whether it's used, returned to river or to stream, and treated over and over and over again. There's also a lot of other watersheds that feed other parts of the state of California, have varying water quality issues that have to be treated. We are very fortunate due to our proximity to the Sierra Nevadas and to the sheer quality of the water, which essentially is snow melt. And it's very difficult to be able to get water almost directly from the source. And that water is of high quality. The elements that we typically have to test for our water quality purposes and reporting really kind of show that in terms of things like hardness and other sort of things that don't show up in our water supply. And that's really by virtue of our proximity to the watershed, specifically to the Sierra Nevada mountains, which really is top-notch water. And we are fortunate in Placer County to be able to have that high quality of water based on our geography.
Thank you, Shawn. And another question in regards to the aquifers. How are the aquifers replenished, and is there a concern about any of those collapsing?
So essentially the aquifers are naturally recharged over time, and Evan had indicated that does take time for that to happen. Again, what we have the opportunity through our aquifer storage and recovery wells is we actually have the ability during wet years to proactively recharge those aquifers. And so based on our program and what we've developed over several decades, that's our plan. We plan to operate the system in a conjunctive way. So when we do have those wet periods, we're going to take advantage of that excess water in the system and recharge where we can, as almost as a bit of like a piggy bank, if you will, where we can take that water and use that water when we encounter dry or drought situations. With respect to aquifers actually collapsing, typically doesn't happen unless you're in an extreme sort of extraction period over a long period of time. We don't operate in that fashion. We don't have those situations where subsidence happens and things like that within our immediate urban area. So that's not an issue of concern here within, generally speaking, within the city of Roseville.
Thanks, Shawn. Andy, we've got another question for you. And the question is, how has PCWA engaged with environmental interests in these water supply plans? Is there resistance to diverting more water to ag and environmental interests?
Yeah, really good question. So we take our stewardship responsibilities here very seriously, as does Cal-Am and City of Roseville, and actually all the water purveyors in the Sacramento region. There's 21 water purveyors in the Sacramento region. And the vast majority of us, almost all of us, are signatories to something called the Water Forum Agreement, which is an agreement among environmental interests, municipalities, and water agencies to really sustainably manage our local water resources for the benefit of the fishery of the Lower American River, for the benefit of our human residents, for the benefit of the upstream areas, places like where my reservoirs are. And so that agreement is really forms the foundation of our sustainability mission, right? So we look at things like this, water purveyors and our population, we're here forever. We don't plan for 2 years out or 10 years out. We plan for forever. And that's really an important mindset because it extends to our sustainability mission when it comes to environmental goals. We want to have a healthy Lower American River. We believe a healthy water supply runs through a healthy ecosystem. And so part of our mission as water purveyors is to not over extract water from surface water sources in dry years, right? And that's some of the reasons why we're asking our residents to conserve this year, and to use things like groundwater, our savings account, in these kinds of years to reduce pressure on the American River. That's part of our overall sustainability mission because, look, we all live here, our residents all live here. They don't want to just live in a place that has adequate water. They want to live in a place that has adequate water supplies, but is also a nice place to live, which means having a good, healthy ecosystem that surrounds us. And so that's really part and parcel of what we do. So that agreement, the Water Forum Agreement, which we all signed in the year 2000, and which we continue to live by today, forms the boundaries of what we all do as water purveyors. And so when I talk about using water from our reservoirs, extracting it at Auburn or taking it out at Folsom to serve places like the city of Roseville and Granite Bay and all those areas, that's all part of that negotiated agreement we have with the environmental community dating back to the year 2000. In fact, in our water rights extension, which we have to do it's a paperwork exercise that the state of California makes us go through, we actually got letters of support from folks like the Sierra Club here in Placer County, because they know that we're managing our water resources in a balanced way, and they trust us to be stewards of our environment. So I feel really comfortable that we continue to have a dialogue. The dialogue didn't stop in the year 2000 when we signed that Water Forum Agreement. It continues to this day. In fact, I was on the phone just Monday with a whole host of environmental interests in the Sacramento region, talking about what we're doing in this dry year to maintain the Lower American River. And so I feel like that's a part of all of our missions. And I know that Shawn's nodding along. I see Evan nodding along. It is what we do here to balance what we do for our customers and what we do for the ecosystem here in Placer and Sacramento counties.
Great to know that you're planning for forever. That's a long time. So big job. Shawn, I've got another question for you about recycled water. How does recycled water get treated? And is there a plan to treat it for drinking water? So can we use that wastewater for drinking water one day?
Yeah, so great question. In terms of the treatment process, I won't go into all the technical details of it other than to say that it's treated at a very high level. It's tertiary treated wastewater essentially, and it's really just a level just below drinking water quality. And so it's been deemed healthy and safe for use in landscaping, even in places that are actually used for recreation, parks, golf courses, etc. So it's treated at quite a high level. It's highly regulated by the state of California. And it took quite a while for that regulatory construct to ultimately be approved. So with that, that's kind of how we operate, obviously within the construct of the regulatory requirements. With respect to utilizing treated wastewater for drinking water purposes, there's certainly in the state of California, there's technologies in terms of indirect potable reuse and direct potable reuse, and those are technologies that are usually used in Southern California in terms of technologies to make the most of the water resources they have. There is, certainly areas that it works well and other areas it doesn't work well. One of the challenges with doing anything regarding those type of treatment processes is you're typically treating it through a reverse osmosis system. And what you get out of that system through the treatment process is a very, very high intensity brine. If you live on near a coastal area, that brine's actually easier to get rid of. It's typically deposited into the ocean. But when you have a situation where you have an inland agency, those types of technologies are extremely expensive. And quite frankly, the regulatory construct isn't quite developed for other types of technology. So by all means, within California, I think the future is going to hold where those technologies are going to be further developed and they're going to be ultimately approved by state regulatory agencies. But I think for our area, I think generally speaking, it's not really technologies that are quite feasible or quite ready for our area here in Sacramento.
Thanks, Shawn. And looks like this is our last question for you as well. When you inject water into the basin, how do you control who ultimately gets to use it?
So that's a great question. A lot of it just has to do with proximity of the groundwater wells. So when you inject groundwater into the aquifer, the groundwater, depending on sort of the gradient that you're dealing with, typically it can move in various speeds. In our case, the water, once we inject it, actually travels quite slowly. We have we always have within sort of the perimeter of our production wells, monitoring wells. And so we can essentially track sort of how that water travels just based on sort of the chemical makeup of that native surface water. And so really it just kind of depends on where those groundwater wells are placed. We don't typically put groundwater wells right next to borders. We try to, be cognizant of how groundwater wells interfere with each other. And certainly we want to do right by our neighbors as well. And so we're actually very strategic about where we place those wells. Obviously, we don't want to go through the time, effort, and money to inject water into the groundwater basin and then see that taken off by others just by virtue of where it's located. So we're very strategic in terms of where we place our groundwater wells and how and when we recharge the basin. Thank
you, Shawn. I appreciate that. Well, that wraps up the Q&A. Thank you all for joining us this evening. And if you want to listen to this presentation again or share this with someone, a recording will be available on our website, placer.ca.gov/Bonnie Gore. I want to say thank you to our presenters from Placer County Water Agency, the City of Roseville, and Cal American Water. The contact information is on the screen. And if there's a question that you have that didn't get to, or if you'd like to follow up in some way, we're going to leave their contact information up on the screen for the next 10 minutes or so. You can grab a pen and paper or take a screenshot with a phone so that you have that information to follow up. So once again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. We're fortunate. We've got great water in our community. We've got great water supply, and we've got great folks who are taking care of this issue for us. So with that, everyone, have a wonderful evening, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Supervisor Gore.